recognize Mr. Goldman, the gentleman from New York, for his 5 minutes question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that my colleague from the 4th District of New York, which does not include any part of New York City, has spent time as a NYPD detective and is now an expert on our border policy and the history of it as he leaves this room. Secretary Mayorkas, you were not allowed to answer a number of the questions that my colleague just asked you. I'd like to give you some time to respond if you would like.
Congressman, I would only say this, that we do not minimize the significance of the challenge at the southern border. We also understand the challenge at the southern border and the fact that it is reflective of a challenge that is gripping our entire hemisphere and, in fact, the world. Yesterday, I spent time with my counterparts from the European Union who spoke of the challenges that they are suffering by reason of an historic displacement of people around the world. We work day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to advance the security of our southwest border, to advance the security of the northern border, and to achieve our highest and most important mission, the safety and security of the American people.
I appreciate that, and I also appreciate very much that policy disputes are not impeachable offenses. And we can wax poetic and make big political pronouncements about whether you should be impeached or not, but impeachment is high crimes and misdemeanors, bribery and treason. A policy dispute and a disagreement about how we are managing the border is not impeachable. But I do want to give you just an opportunity, because I know the administration under your leadership has actually taken numerous measures to address what you rightly point out to be a dramatic increase in the influx of immigrants to this country, in large part because of the collapsing governments in Central and South America, as well as climate disruption. So could you just describe briefly some of the measures that you have taken to address this influx in immigration at our southern border?
Congressman, the foundational point is the following, and it's a point about which everyone agrees, that we are working with a broken immigration system that has been in desperate need of reform for more than 20 years. I believe it's since 1996. Number one, within the confines of that broken immigration system, we are implementing a model that does work, and that is to build safe, lawful, and orderly pathways for individuals to obtain the relief that the law that Congress has passed provides them, and to deliver consequences for those individuals who do not avail themselves of those pathways. That is a model that is proven effective in the context of a broken immigration system, and also in the context of a phenomenon, the phenomenon of migration of displaced people, that is incredibly dynamic and changes month to month.
And I appreciate very much your point, which my Republican colleagues do not seem to accept, which is that our immigration system can only be fixed by us. It requires legislation passed by Congress that cannot be managed separately and individually by the executive branch. Director Wray, in my short time left, I want to focus on a testimony you gave a couple weeks ago, noting the tremendous uptick in anti-Semitic hate crimes. I believe you testified that even though Jews make up only 2.4% of the United States population, anti-Semitic hate crimes account for around 60% of all religious-based hate crimes. And you indicated that this comes from across the spectrum, from the left, from the right, foreign terrorist organizations, homegrown violent extremists, domestic violent extremists. Can you expand a little bit on those heightened threats to the Jewish community now 2 weeks later, and how the increase of anti-Semitic hate speech has impacted or affected or increased the threats of violence that the FBI has noticed since October 7th?
Well, so as you said, I have tried to be very clear that one of the things that jumps out at me, and which is why we work so closely at the FBI, both nationally and locally with the Jewish community, is that the Jewish community is uniquely targeted by terrorism and hate really across the spectrum. And not that there should ever be a proportion for hate, but the idea that a group that makes up only 2.4% of the American public should be targeted with something close to 60% of all religiously based hate crime is abhorrent and should be abhorrent to everyone. We have seen over the last few years an increase, not just in hate crimes overall, but an increase, a marked increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes. And that's all with the recognition that hate crimes are, as we all know, chronically underreported. And we have had, just in the past few years, we've thwarted plots to attack synagogues in Colorado, Ohio, Nevada. We've made arrests for threats or attacks against the Jewish community in California to Michigan to New Jersey. We helped rescue the hostages in Colleyville. I could go on, and that's all before October 7th. Since October 7th, as I've testified, we've seen an increase in threats and reported threats, which cover this across the spectrum, but the biggest chunk of those, again, by far, is threats to the Jewish community. And so we are aggressively investigating those threats, but we are also very purposefully and intensely doubling down on our engagement with the Jewish community, which needs our help. And I think it's incumbent on all Americans to stand together on this.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the chairman for indulging over time. I would just add that I do hope that the FBI makes a much more concerted effort to pressure local law enforcement agencies to participate in the collection of data on hate crimes, which is woefully deficient. So even that information that you have only includes about 21% of law enforcement agencies in the country. And I thank you and yield back.
Gentleman yields.